Okay. What time we got? 7 o'clock. Call the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. I hope you found everything on the link I sent on the shared drive. And I hope you can't see everything else that's on the shared drive other than what I send you, but I think I've got that figured out. But any public participation? Seeing none. We have a list of meeting minutes to approve. The first one being our meeting minutes of Feb 12, 2021. I'll give you a minute to find that if you need to. Brian's joining, Bill's joining.
In the meantime, I'll move approval of those minutes, Mr. Chairman.
Second on the
And
minutes.
I will second that.
Okay.
Okay,
And Dan
So
Sherman,
meeting
you're on that
minutes-
subcommittee too?
Oh, I thought he was doing a regular minutes. I'm
The
sorry.
February 12th of the school is a school subcommittee, I believe.
Oh, never mind. I withdraw my second.
yeah, school, I'm sorry, I worded it wrong. You're right, thank you. School subcommittee minutes from Feb 12, 2021. And Gerard is the chairperson, Bill, myself, and Brian. Brian, would you second that? I'll second it.
Brian is seconding it. Yeah,
I'll
okay.
second it. We're all muted. Sorry, Jim.
Thank you, gentlemen. Any discussion on the meeting minutes from the Wakefield Public Schools Subcommittee on February 12th? No discussion. Motion to accept.
Aye.
Aye.
Seconded. All those in the subcommittee in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you. Next is the Town Hall Subcommittee, Feb 18th, 21. Can I get a motion from somebody on that subcommittee, please?
I move
Town
approval,
Hall.
Mr. Chairman.
Second,
Thank you, Evan. Thank you, Evan. Who was the second?
Teray, second.
Great.
Thank you. Discussion.
No.
Seeing no discussion, a motion to approve the Town Hall Subcommittee minutes, Feb 18th.
Aye.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Another subcommittee minutes, February 19th from the school subcommittee. Again, same group.
I'll move approval.
Gerard moves approval, second.
Second, Jim.
Thank you, Bill. Discussion on those minutes, February 19th, school committee subcommittee. Okay, motion to accept.
We'll move.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay. And last is the regular Finance Committee meeting minutes, February 25th.
I'll move approval.
I'll second that.
Any discussion prior to approval? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed to the meeting minutes of Feb 25? Unanimous, Steve. Okay. So we have the school department is with us tonight to give us a little bit of overview. I know we have subcommittee DPW minutes. I'll probably do that afterwards, Steve, I think, if we want to have the
Yeah, whatever
school
you
go
want to
first.
do. Yep, whatever you want to do, Mr.
And
Chairman.
so the Christine is on and Doug Lyons is on from the school. And the intent is to try to get the group, the administration from the school before us, a couple of times. So this time is kind of a preliminary discussion about where they are and where the budget is. There's a public meeting coming up next week on the budget, and then they'll be back in front of us after they get approval from the school committee. So they'll be back to us. I think we thought in early the school, they're voting with the school committee on the 23rd of March, so they'll be back to us after that. So at this point, I'll open up either Doug or Christine.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us here tonight. I think it's sort of fitting that we're here on March 11th because it is the 1-year anniversary that we had to close down for 61 school days last year. So it's sort of fitting. I feel like we've come a little bit full circle as we're looking into fiscal 22. I do have a couple of slides put together. Do you want me to share my screen?
Yes, do I have to give that to Steve?
Yeah, I think you do.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you go into participants and
Yep.
you hover over Christine and there's some dots should show up, I think then you can give her the ability to do it, I think.
Let's see.
You can. You want me to help you out at all?
Yeah, no, I have done this before, but
It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
not on purpose.
I think you could make her the co-host. That might do it.
Right, so
Oh, I think I got it. Here we go.
All right, look at that.
There you go. Can you see?
progress, yes.
Wakefield Public Schools inspire the love of learning. There you go. Okay. So you might have seen some of these slides already. I think Gerard or Jim might have shared them with your committee. But I thought the first couple of slides were worth repeating because it talks about our goals for 22. Because I quote Doug Lyons when he says, "This year has been like no other." We've had to adjust. Last year's budget was approved by school committee, I think 2 days before the shutdown. So our budget for fiscal 21 never even considered what COVID-19 was going to be like and how it was going to affect the 7 schools and the over 3,000 students that we serve. So now here we are a full year later, and we're kind of talking about, well, what does those goals for 22 look like? And I know that Gerard shared 3 different budget scenarios with you. So those were probably from about 2 months ago when we talked about what potentially our budget could look like. If we're back, if we're not back, if we're having a hybrid or a hybrid, I think that's what Steve called it, the hybrid of the hybrid. So, so that's sort of what we're doing. So this is the decisions that we've made. And we've even, as of, I think the latest changes came 2 days ago from the commissioner. So we're still adjusting. But this is our proposal for fiscal 22, and we presented this Tuesday night. We talk about our 4 goals: to create safe, and I won't read everything to you, but we had to create safe teaching and learning opportunities for all students and staff. We're funding a faculty of staff of 578 adults in 7 bargaining units to educate approximately 3,393 students in grades pre-K to 12 and post-academy. We're always driven by WPS instructional strategy and our core values. We always want to be fiscally responsive and sustainable while acknowledging the changing demands of COVID-19. So what are our objectives? Our objectives are to address learning loss. And I think you might hear that term a lot. I think you might hear it on the news. Like, what is learning loss, right? What would students have traditionally learned and what pace would they have learned at versus in a typical year versus this year in a hybrid model? And we're seeing some gaps. So we're trying to address that at all grade levels. We are we're trying to, and we intend to include the 5 FTEs, which were removed from last year's budget. As you'll remember, our budget, which was approved by school committee, was then subsequently cut by the town by $400,000. So we were never able to add that 5 FTEs that we wanted to last year. We wanted to continue to replenish PPE, supplies and materials without our COVID grants. We'll talk about those in a minute, but our one-time COVID grants in 22. We want to continue our preventative maintenance on buildings in conjunction with DPW. And I just want to say, I cannot thank DPW enough. They've been such a partner to us in order to, number one, open schools, because we had to assess all of our facilities. And DPW and Bob Shiroli have done a phenomenal job. We wish to retain 3 additional FTEs that we hired this year for cleaning, 2 custodians, and 1 nurse for nursing services, not just for contact tracing, but for also screening. And we know we're going to need that moving forward, but we can talk about that as well. We look to retain some remote teaching positions, because we know with the changes that the commissioner has talked to us for this year and for next year, we are still have to provide services for families that for medical reasons can't come back. Their students can't come back next year for medical reasons or privacy reasons. But we have to provide something for that, something for those families. We also are looking to support our special education out of district costs and services. So those are our objectives. And then I just kind of thought I would explain a little bit about what the Wakefield Public Schools budget, what the main components of the budget are. And I know when other departments come before you, they talk about personnel, contracted services, and supplies and materials. So I just wanted to explain a little bit for the school department what that means. For personnel services for us, it means the salaries for all school department employees, whether they're part-time or full-time, permanent or temporary, but all are paid through the city's payroll system. Personnel services represent staffing. We have substitutes, we have athletic coaches, we have academic coaches. So all of that is encumbered in the personnel services line. Then the next part is our non-salary expenses. We have contracted services, transportation, equipment maintenance, evaluations. These are services that we hire outside individuals or companies to provide for us. They could be for a day, a week, a year, or up to 3 years. We also have supplies and materials, textbooks, paper, software. These are tangible, consumable items that require periodic replenishment year over year. Now, as you will see for us, the largest bucket is obviously personnel. But again, those other 2 line items we'll talk about in the next slide. Here we go. So what does that mean for us, those 3 categories? So for 21, our budget for personnel was $36,333,628. For next year, we're budgeting $38,337,867. So the total budget from 21 to 22 increases $2,126,541, which brings us to the 4.88% increase from 21 to 22. Now, again, remember that 21 number was reduced by 400,000. The number that school committee voted on was 43,976,659. So we are looking in this 22 budget to not only replace the 5 positions, but also to increase that. Then we thought it was important to call attention to our one-time COVID grants that we were very fortunate in Wakefield to receive from state and federal levels. We've received 7 to date. We've received 7 COVID, one-time COVID related grants. The ESSER 1, the water improvement grant, which we received in conjunction with the town, which helped us with water bubblers. The CVRF grant was our largest one, and that helped us open schools. Without that grant, we were never going to be able to do all the facility maintenance, all the PPE, all the plexiglass. That really helped us reopen school. We got a small school lunch grant because we had to then now provide grab and go lunches. We also received a remote learning technology grant that was competitive. We applied for it and we were so happy we got it. ESSER 2, we were just notified about a month ago. We're going to receive ESSER 2 money that we can either use in 21 or 22. And the last one we received was the State Coronavirus Prevention Fund, $124,000. We received half of that this month. We're going to receive the half next month, and that must be spent by June 30th. Again, all must be spent for COVID-related expenses only. And to date, we have not put any salaries on these grants. It has all been for materials, contracted services for our providers. It was to help us open school and to create this hybrid model that we're currently in. So that was what we received. So what did we spend? So COVID costs for us at the school department in 21, and this is to date. To date, we've spent $1.7 million on COVID-related costs. It started, I think, in July with PPE, facilities updates, overtime for custodial nurses. I cannot say enough, and I know Doug will also say, our nurses have been phenomenal through this, working weekends, late at night, contact tracing. We were able to stay open and stay in hybrid because of our nurses and our custodians. Building maintenance and supplies. I know everyone's heard of the Bala report. We had to hire this Bala company to come in, do an assessment of all of our facilities to say, is it in fact safe to be back in school? And if not, what do we need to do to get our students and staff back in school? Screens for the windows at the high school. We had to purchase 140 screens for windows that never had them. We had to make sure we had ventilation, filters for HVAC units, air purifiers. We had to make sure all interior rooms had air circulation, storage containers. Because of hybrid, we could only have half of the amount of students in the buildings at any one time that we normally had, which meant we had to remove half of the furniture that was currently in our classrooms, which means we had to rent storage containers, have a moving company help us move over 4 weeks, move all the furniture out to these storage containers so we can socially distance. Remote learning. We had 16 remote positions this year, which include the 2 custodians, the nurse, teachers, paraprofessionals, to the tune of, so far, it looks like it's going to be almost $800,000 for those 16 remote positions. We have about 400 students who are currently enrolled fully remote. We had to make sure we provided all the services to those students that they would receive if they were in person. COVID testing for WPS staff. We've done this for 2 months now on Sundays. Staff can come, be tested for free, and to make sure that everyone's safe and they can come to work on Monday morning. Technology resources, Zoom, Chromebooks, hotspots. We needed to make sure that our students who were either at home learning, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous, that they could in fact Zoom into class. We also have a daily health attestation app where every morning all WPS staff receive either a text on your phone or an email saying, do you have any of these symptoms? If yes, you are immediately directed to the school nurse to answer additional questions. But we thought that was very important to make sure that we were acknowledging if anyone was having a symptom that could lead to possibly they would need a COVID test. So that overall to date, in March, we're at $1.7 million for COVID.
So when we talk about knowns and unknowns, excuse me, I'm just sending Amy the link to our. So when we talk about knowns and unknowns, we're continuing with kind of the structure and agreements that we've made in the past in regard to just budgeting for what is known. And so it's important that, you know, again, we reference this idea of learning loss, right? So all of the schools and all of the districts in the Middlesex League, there are 12 of us, are all in a hybrid schedule, right? And essentially what a hybrid schedule means is that schools and districts have essentially cut their classes in half, right? And they have scheduled either half of the day, half of the week, or half of the month for kids to come in and out of school in smaller groups of students to maintain a social physical distance of 6 feet, right? And so because of that, in-person learning, we have 170 school days this year. And so in-person learning at different levels, kids are going to be in school a different amount of time. So because they're in school learning in person a different amount of time, they're learning a lot outside of school. Some of our students are thriving in remote spaces, others are not, right? And so there's kind of extremes on both sides. As we have, students that are thriving, we also have students that are just really coming undone and just struggling. And so when we talk about the need to address learning loss, it is to get students back into school if they can come back and return from a remote schedule, but also providing them what they may need. And so what we're seeing, that there's really a high need for intensive intervention support in addition to what's normally being taught. There also needs to be kind of opportunities for students to learn content that they missed this year, right? And so at every level, because we have made choices to prioritize certain subjects, there were things that were taught more and there were things that were taught less. So I just want to make note of what that means in regard to learning loss, right? And so which ties into the next bullet, which is we are trying to think creatively about extending the school day and also extending the school year into the summer, and extending services after school in the fall and spring of next year as well. So we're thinking about addressing kind of intervention services for the next 18 to 36 months for students, right? And so that's important to note. Technology is a big component in supporting remote services. And so you'll hear more about that. So safety and health services, direct instruction, intervention, remote services, counseling has also been more vital and more important than ever before. Like I made a comment a moment ago, like we have students that are thriving, other students are coming undone. When I say undone, they need different kinds of support for social, emotional kind of supports just to participate in their day and to participate in their learning, right? And that number of students is going to increase moving forward as we're going to be working through the next transition of reopening schools here in April. And we're also anticipating that the need for continued protective equipment and modified workspaces. So that's kind of the knowns. What is also a known and a reference that I want to make here that is an FY21 reference that I just think, because I know that there'll be a question about it, or I'm anticipating that there'll be a question. The types of services that we've needed to provide this year, in person and remote, has cost us a lot in regard to special education services. We're going to need, for this year, to access the stabilization fund. We're anticipating it's going to be about a $230,000 motion that we would put together to make to access stabilization. I know in the last FinCom meeting, I think that there was some conversation that we might need to access all $500,000. I think I heard Dan say that I think Dan gave a balance in the last meeting of a little bit more than that. We are not, I just want to be clear, we are not looking to access the entire stabilization fund in this year. So in regard to the unknowns moving forward, what does COVID mean to us moving forward? We're still going to have to, it's still going to be with us. We're still going to have to kind of maintain a lot of the structures that we've started this year. We're looking at enrollment trends. Enrollment across the state is down between 3 and 10 or 11%, depending on the district that you're in. And some of those declines are predictable and they can be kind of pointed to and addressed, right? We know where students are. In Wakefield, we know a lot of our students have chosen to go to private school. There are parents that withheld sending their children to kindergarten this year. There are other parents that have gone to charter. There are other parents that have kind of put their children in pods and are homeschooling their children as well. So we are anticipating that our enrollment will increase this year in the fall, but that's an important piece because enrollment equals class size, right? And class size equals classrooms and teachers, right? So that's an important kind of unknown that we are working on actively to put together. We're also seeing kind of a shortage of teachers, paraeducators, and substitutes across the state, not only in Wakefield, but across the state. You know, positions that we would post a year ago where we would have 100 applicants, we're seeing 20 applicants, right? If people are employed and they have a position, even if it's a substitute position in another district, people aren't making moves right now. And so we're also anticipating the need to continue remote services on a smaller scale. And we know that the Commissioner of Education qualified in his recent guidance that remote opportunities for children next year will only be allowed if they have medical documentation that students need to be out of school. We are anticipating that right now we have just close to 400 kids in a full remote plan. Right now we are anticipating between 20 and 40 of those students are going to need remote service and are going to be medically compromised and unable to come back to school. So we feel pretty confident that they're going to get documentation and continue in a remote plan. And when we're looking at remote teachers, what we're not including here are special education remote services that we would try to provide through the teachers that are employed during the regular day program, right? So those teachers are not identified as an additional cost because we think that we can manage them effectively and efficiently through the regular day program. Next slide, Christine. So in terms of our proposal, again, I know that Christine has said this, we are looking at reinstating the 5 positions that were proposed last year. Those 5 positions are the 2 science positions that we contractually agreed to and 3 special education positions. All of those positions are assigned and we need them desperately. I will say that we made a kind of a year-over-year contractual agreement with the union that we would have hired 2 science teachers last year and 2 science teachers this year. But what we have done is we've essentially moved it out a year. You know, Steve, we've learned this from Steve, we're not saying no, we're saying not now because it's financially prudent. You know, we're moving it out a year, we're extending the timeline. So we will be coming back next year with the add of the 2 contractually agreed upon science teachers. And the other positions that we're seeking, 2 custodians that we feel like we're going to need due to continued kind of cleaning responsibilities and things that we're doing with COVID. Then our nurse, we have a COVID related nurse right now who's been vital just to allow us to be back in school. And Christine described this, and 3 remote teachers for students unable to return to school in an in-person model. You know, so we anticipate that there would be a question about, well, why 3 teachers? Because based on the numbers that we know that are coming back, we think we can manage effectively those students and teach them and give them the services that they need with the 3 positions. So the 6 positions that are COVID related, the cost of those are $360,000. We're going to look at funding those positions as an offset through a federal grant as we move into 22. And we think that this is kind of the best way to go. It's prudent. It kind of potentially reduces the overall number that we're looking at for our budget. And if we can't get funding for them, we would seek to fill them through the regular budget. And so that's an important piece to note. Next slide. And so the total FY22 recommended budget is $45,703,200 with an increase of 4.88% over FY21. We've included the preliminary Chapter 70 amounts on this page. I'm sure you've all seen this. I know Steve has shared it. It's an increase, what we believe is going to be $101,000. we're actually anticipating that's going to go up because our enrollment is going to increase. So one of the things that we talk about is we know COVID is going to end. We are as excited as any group in the town to see COVID end and to get back to some type of regular schedule. But we're also kind of looking through COVID, looking out a number of years, and we're continuing to think about, the changes and improvements that we've made with facilities this year. We're looking at a new high school. We're looking at continuing a preventative maintenance schedule with DPW that has, I would argue, because we've been able to partner with DPW this year, if we were not able to do all the work that we did collaboratively with DPW, we would not have been able to open schools. So Joe Conway and who on the school side, Bob Shiroli is his partner. I would argue that those two have been just phenomenal and just helping us not only open schools, but stay open. And, we're pleased to be here and share this information. You'll notice if Gerard shared the slides, we cut the number of slides down by about half, to just be more concise and to get really through the presentation. We know we've shared a bunch of information on the front side, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that we can from the group.
Hey, Doug, I'll just clarify. No, I haven't shared the slides yet since this morning's meeting, so my apologies for that.
No worries.
Further apologies for starting the rumor that it was 500,000 in sped stabilization. Now, that was on me inferring, trying to triangulate the number for estimate purposes, but
Yeah.
so 2 strikes on me. Thanks.
All right, so as I said, I think at the beginning, we wanted the school group to come in and kind of give us a bit of an overview of where they are, where they think they're headed budget-wise. Public forum, and Doug can explain it, but you have a public forum next week. Doug, just go over the schedule if you have it, right? If you
So the way our budget presentation goes, we make a proposal to school committee, then we're required to have a public forum where the public can ask questions about any part of the budget. They can make requests that we expand the budget, contract the budget, et cetera, et cetera. We take all that information into consideration, and then the following school committee meeting will be a vote. But we will be presenting, so next week we will have a budget forum. The following week on Monday evening, we will be at town council. On Tuesday evening, we will be back at school committee. So that's 2022.
So the public, yep. So the public forum is the 18th, and then 22, 23 town council committee.
Correct. And then
we'll
be back to you.
be back to the finance committee.
Right.
Great. Gerard, I don't know if you want to add anything. We'll just open it up for questions.
No, I'll just add briefly that Bob Shirley did walk us through a bit of the capital request, but we de-emphasized that for during this morning's meeting. But I think best to give Joe Bertrand's committee a chance to weigh in on the capital plan holistically first before we got into any of that tonight. Part of the rationale for us not sending the slides or the budget to you all, even if they're perfectly open to the public already, theoretically there could be changes either because of the state mandates that are coming down somewhat out of nowhere, and also the public forum. But I'm certainly happy to circulate that to everyone right now if that's helpful. So that was a little bit of judgment on my part. My apologies if it's a sticking point. But
yeah.
Other than that, that was a good briefing. As I've been mentioning, everything they've mentioned here tonight, I think, is consistent with what I've tried to message in the last couple of full meetings, and certainly what we're hearing in Subcom. So back to you in the studio, Jim.
Great. So again, the budget is now on their website, and we'll circulate it. It's subject to changes, approval, and coming to us. I will open it up for questions. Dan?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we
Okay,
can.
great. So first, a little bit of background, a little clarification. When the town asked the school department to reduce their budget last year by 400,000, that reduced the request from about 4.9% down to roughly 4%. So just so everybody's aware that so over the 2-year period, the request is about 4.4 per year over 2 years. It's another way of thinking of it. I did have a question regarding the 3 remote learning teachers. I think Christine said that there was, you expect a group of people or students to not come in into school starting, I guess next fall. So how many students are you thinking will not come in? Because I know right now where everybody at the Fed is saying schools are going to open, everybody's going to be vaccinated in the summertime or by the summertime. So I'm really curious as to how many students do you think will not be coming in come September that perhaps used to come in but are now not. You have any idea how many we're estimating?
We are the number that we're working with right now, Dan, is between 22 and 40 students.
22 and 40.
It could go more than that, but that's kind of the what we believe is a pretty solid number, because we believe that those students are going to meet the medical, they're going to get the medical documentation, the waiver to kind of submit back to the school and to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed to qualify for remote services.
So in terms of that documentation, is it something like where they have some kind of a medical condition that affects their lungs or something like that?
It could be, yes. The short answer is yes. It could be any type of medical condition that may preclude them from coming into school, right? And so in that type of, that documentation and that requirement, this is new, right? And so this is a new wrinkle for us. The other adjustment is, it's the type of thing, Dan, where, if you build it, they'll come, right? Because students have been in a remote plan and have been successful, and there's a need for them to be there. So the number that we're working with, Dan, to get down to your question, is between 22 and 40 at this point. It could grow, but we're working with the number of between 22 and 40.
Okay. So then if you're adding 3 remote teachers, then each teacher would have to cover a variety of, let's say you have 1 for elementary, you have 1 for junior, and 1 for the high school?
So we're anticipating that those students are going to be predominantly K through 5.
Oh, okay.
Right. And so we think that they're going to be content area teachers that can teach any content as elementary teachers would. Right. We're also collaborating with SEAM Collaborative and other districts in the Middlesex League. If, for example, it went to 150, we would try to create a collaborative with other schools and kind of pool teachers to serve a larger number of kids, just to save money is kind of what we're working with as a model right now in the event that it goes over the numbers that we're anticipating.
Right. Yeah. And as I think in terms of the health department, we've got a great collaborative working with Melrose. So I can see we're adding, Melrose or Reading and having 1 teacher cover, the 3 districts could make a lot of sense since it's all remote.
Well, what we've talked about is, if Reading wanted to give a teacher or 2 teachers, we could serve certainly larger populations of kids, and certainly kids at different levels, right? When you get into high school, it gets a little bit more costly and it's a little bit more complex because students are participating in different levels of classes. So likely we would be subscribing to online courses for those students if the high school population were to swell, but we're not anticipating that it will swell at this point.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're certainly welcome, Dan.
Thank you. Doug Butler. Doug?
Hey, Doug.
There you go.
Quick couple of questions for you. One is, yes, I'm trying to reconcile the vast majority of students going back into a sort of normalized environment and the need for the 3 extra custodial and nursing staff, and trying to understand why, if everybody's vaccinated, why are we then going to, are we upping the cleaning? What are we doing more than we're doing either currently or I'm feeling like the Wednesday thing is sort of proved to be not that useful. So I'm just trying to understand why I feel like we'd either need one or the other, like the 5 additional people for science and whatnot, and for regular learning, or the additional COVID folks. And is the plan that those are 3 positions that we are thinking might be for 22 and then gone?
So, so you asked a 5-part question.
Of course.
So I'm prepared, I think. We've had this conversation before. So let me try to take them by the numbers, right? In terms of, so first of all, let me be clear that the 6 positions that we believe are COVID related, we're seeking to fund those positions through a federal grant, right? So that's a point that I don't want to understate that, right?
Oh, no, I mean, yeah, I hope for the best, but prepare.
That's number one. In terms of why would we still need custodians? So one of the things that has changed dramatically this year, and you'll hear this from Joe Conway, you'll hear it from Steve Mayo, is the maintenance and changes that we've needed to make to our preventative maintenance plans has just exploded, right? So we've done an engineering assessment of all of our buildings and all of our HVAC, and some parts of it came back in very good shape, and other parts came back in really less than good shape, right? And so with the added responsibilities, with 1,000 air filters, air purifiers, with filters that need to be cleaned, with units, air and ventilation units in classrooms where they need to be cleaned and filters need to be changed twice a year. So there's just an uptick in work that's happening with the custodians, and that falls to us, right? So the work that's happening in buildings in terms of the maintenance inside, it falls to us on the school side. So because those responsibilities are increased, we feel like we need these positions in terms of the custodians, right? And so
do we think that, do you think everybody's keeping the air filters forever now? Like air filters are just a thing?
I don't know what you mean by that.
I mean, are we going to, is every year going forward going to have the same standards of cleanliness and air purification and everything else as if we are in the middle of a pandemic, of an airborne pandemic? Like, are we planning to, like, I guess, do the level of cleaning that we had to do in 2021 or 2020 and 2021? Do we think that's what we're going to need to do in 2023? And are we building for that?
Well, we're talking about preventative maintenance, and then you brought cleaning into it, right?
Well, I'm saying, you're saying preventative maintenance. I'm saying, yes, you put in whatever, 100 or 200 air filters,
yeah,
into classrooms. Are we going to keep those in?
They'll be changed twice a year.
No. I mean, so you're going to keep the purification systems in place.
Yes.
As if.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Is this the new normal? I think, is this the new normal? I think is the question.
I think moving forward, it's going to be the new normal for some time, right? Like masks are going to be here for some time. I think that this is where we are in this moment in time, and this is why we feel that we need these positions. In terms of the nurse, we still need to contact trace. We're still going to need to contact trace. We're still going to need to support families. We're still going to need to work with people in isolation and that are going out remote, right? So when we have a close contact, when we bring students back to school in April, right, we need to be able to do that work. And our nurses also, our COVID nurses also.
But I'm not talking about April. We're talking about September here, because we're really, like, I granted, but like this is the July 1st to June 30th budget. So it's
Correct.
all next school year. And,
Correct.
I guess the question is next school year, are we really going to be doing contact tracing? Maybe.
We are anticipating that we will need to continue to do contact tracing.
Okay.
And I would also add to that our custodians had to assist with all of our lunches, because we were serving lunches for this year in the Galvin, and for next year, our schedules, we're trying to make sure that we were still distancing, and we're still cleaning in between lunches. So in order to make sure we had to do that, and we only had so many minutes in between lunches, so we've had to adjust quite a bit the custodial schedules as well.
No, again, and this isn't to do the third degree. This is more just like, oh, okay, we're planning for a lot of what we had to go through this past year to certainly extend into next school year.
Yes.
Okay.
Doug Butler, are you good for now?
Yeah, sure.
Don, you have a question?
Yes, yep. Actually, one quick question and one probably a little longer. The first one is, and I just haven't heard whether vaccines are going to be extended to the student population at any point. Was wondering if you had heard that one way or another.
So we have heard nothing official. We've heard that vaccinations for students, especially our secondary students, are going to be available in September. But that's, nothing official. That's just tentative information.
Okay. So my second question is, in situations like you've described where there are a number of students that have met challenges in the remote learning, have fallen behind, have trouble keeping up. Are you expecting and planning for an increase in IEP requests with the new year? And how does that impact, returning to normal, or is this a new normal that you're going to have to adjust for?
Well, I think it's a new normal that we're going to have to adjust to, because what we're seeing is a dramatic uptick in requests for special education testing, and also an uptick in a request for special education services. So we're anticipating that service requests for kids that have IEPs and requests for parents that would like their children to be tested and qualify for IEPs has increased dramatically, Don.
Thank you. Don, that good?
Yes, thanks, Jim.
Great.
Evan's warming up. On
No,
deck.
I don't know. Oh, there's Evan.
Mr. Chairman, for the love of God, I can't figure out how to raise my hand again. I don't know what's going on, but I appreciate you recognizing me, Doug. First of all, Doug and Christine, I have to tell you, I really appreciate this this overview that I think in some ways differs from previous years. That I'm seeing some numbers, and I know you guys are focused on students and a lot of the qualitative stuff that you do that's really important. And us as finance committee members, we're looking for numbers, and I really sort of appreciate the 30,000-foot view here. In terms of to dovetail, I guess, a little bit on the questions that Doug Butler was asking, you might be right that this is the new normal, for some of these services that you're increasing because of the pandemic. I sort of come from a place where I'd rather budget and plan in a way that it's not necessarily. And if we have to make these permanent positions, we sort of cross that bridge when we get to it. I don't think we're at that bridge yet. And so is there any thought into putting some of these, like these custodians and the nurse, is there any thought into sort of contracting that work out so we don't have a bunch of new permanent FTEs? Because listen, I've been in municipal government long enough now that those positions don't go away. You add a permanent, they're never getting cut, So can you just speak to that?
I can. And so first of all, these are 1-year positions, right? These are 1-year positions. No, please don't.
I'm going to hold you to it, Doug.
No, listen, and so in terms of your question, we brought a private cleaning company in this year, Evan, right? This is right up your alley, man. And so we brought in a private cleaning company this year. If you were on school committee, you would love this. And you know what? It cost us, but it saved us in the long run. And so we're looking at and thinking about, we're looking at any way possible to save money. We're applying for, so to answer your question, these are 1-year positions, right? So that's a critical piece. We can revisit this and talk more about it, but that's where we're at.
Doug, I'm not a betting man, but what would you set the line at in terms of these positions being gone next year? It's rhetorical, but you understand what I'm saying? If we can avoid bringing on new FTEs with the benefits, expenses, and everything else, you know, I just, what's wrong with the cleaning company? You liked it. So do we have to bring on new FTEs? You know, can we continue to treat this as a temporary and sort of contract out for it?
The cleaning company is 4 times what the 2 custodians cost.
Well, that's a good answer.
So if that's what you'd recommend, we can change that.
Well done, sir.
No, so
All right. No, I think a good additional piece of information on that. And as you say, it's a 1-year contract. And Evan and I and the rest of us will be back to talk about it next year.
Now, and I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I could just, I think Doug touched on this earlier. Could you just talk a little bit, do you have a little bit more, I know it's hard to project, but a little bit more specific numbers on the enrollment? I was sort of, are you saying, you know, you're expecting enrollment to increase, but maybe not as much as you were originally expecting it would? Is that what I was sort of gathering?
So we're anticipating that our numbers will be what they were in October of last year.
Okay.
And so we're anticipating, you know, an increase of about 65 students, right? 65, between 65 and 80 students. We're going to keep close tabs on that, right?
Is that sort of on the trend line over the last, I don't know, 3 to 5 years?
So the trend line for us, we've done an enrollment study with MSBA, and they did a 10-year look. Steve was also part of this, and our enrollment is actually pretty stable, right? We're looking at our 3,500 to 3,550, 3,560 in a 10-year window.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
All right. I don't see any other hands up. Final requests. All right. I want to thank those from the administration. I know there's folks here as well from the school committee, and appreciate you coming in. You got a busy few weeks ahead of you. And I will say, you know, we've been to a few meetings with the admin staff, and there's no doubt about it that things are changing every day with the schools, as you can hear on the news, and the discussions between the facilities folks and Doug and Christine certainly get a better appreciation of what's going on. And I had talked to Doug, you know, like in the fall, saying, I want to catch up with you. I want to catch up with you. And every time I wanted to catch up with Doug Lyons, I'd read something else in the newspaper and I wouldn't bother him. I just let it go for a while because of how things were dynamic. But appreciate you coming in, and the information that is out, I think Gerard is going to forward, and we'll talk more again in a few weeks with the schools. So thank you.
I just sent it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thanks a lot.
We appreciate the opportunity. Have a good night.
Take care. Okay, Steve, do we want, you want Kevin to go on DPW? You want me to give the highlights on the subcommittee?
I think maybe you could give the highlights and then we go to Kevin and then to Joe.
Sure, very good. So I chaired the DPW subcommittee again this year, myself, Stefan, Dennis Hogan, and David. So we met last week. Joe has a memo that's in his packet, and you'll notice on the information I provided you folks, there's a folder for DPW. There's a lot of documents there, but Joe has an overview memo that his predecessor had done, and Ann Wade is also on the call tonight from the team. But basically, I sent out my update just today. I apologize for that. But, you know, we had a good discussion talking about line items. You know, the budget book is very inclusive. There's a lot of information in there. just towards the middle of my update, there were several line items that Dennis was identifying that have been level funded for years and didn't get used. And, he was encouraging and pushing on that to make some changes or adjust things that just aren't getting spent. No different than, the police budget or other budgets. The one thing I say about the DPW budget is there's a lot of components to it. So there's a lot more line items in there and it warrants, a good look. This budget does include half of there was a $110,000 cut last year. So this budget includes restoring half of that, is my understanding. Salary increases were generally consistent, meaning, they're contractually obligated with steps and lanes. There are some outliers. There's some people getting some substantial raises. I did take the liberty of putting percentages on the document that I don't remember what it's called, but it's like DPW. You'll see it, the DPW spreadsheet. I did do percentages for all salaries. As you get into the rest of the body of that, you can see that. Joe did indicate there's no new FTEs this year. There is one open FTE, I think, and he can elaborate on that. And again, some of the other stuff bulleted at the bottom of my overview that the subcommittee looked at. 4.11 was the budget increase this year for the overall DPW. Water and sewer had minimal increases because the MWRA assessment was low. And Joe can speak to that a little bit. I found that great being involved in DPW the last few years, 4, 5, 6 years. I mean, we had like 8% last year, for example, MWRA assessment. Refuse collection and disposal, there's an increase, 8.6. Joe will talk about that. Snow and ice budget, we did note also that it's been funded at 850, which has been funded at a number of years in a row. And that's not what the ask is. Joe has some figures and some historical information, and the ask is higher than that. So there's a variance there, and it's been funded at 850. We'll talk a little bit more about that, I think, as we get into the budget. Capital outlay, he'll hit on nothing too major. Area concern is the North Ave DPW building. That actually was on there from last year. I left it on there again this year. And if we had opportunity for regionalization, Evan mentioned it just a minute ago, or maybe Doug mentioned it, or somebody did about, remote learning and stuff like that. I think over time, regionalization is an opportunity for DPW as well. So I hope you found that in the attachment with all of the documents that you were bombarded with over the last 72 hours. And again, on behalf of the rest of the committee, that was our overview. Anybody else from the committee want to add? Subcommittee, that is.
Okay.
Very good. That's it, Stephen.
Okay, Kevin, you want to jump in quick and then we'll give it to Joe?
Sure. I'll go over most of the same stuff Jim just did. DPW consists of 4 individual budgets. There's the Dpw operating budget, there's the snow and ice budget, and then both the water and sewer enterprise accounts. For the Dpw operating budget, we're recommending an increase of $256,867 over last year. This increase breaks down under personal services. The increase is $195,805. This includes contractual and negotiated increases. As Jim has mentioned, we were also restoring $52,371 of the $110,000 that was cut last year. So that makes up the total of the $195,805 for personal services. Under purchase of services, there was an increase of $61,062. The 4 main lines that were increased under purchase of services, there was the stormwater management line item, the electrical and natural gas line item, the tree removal equipment line item, and the traffic line painting line item. Materials and supplies and other charges were both level funded. Total budget request for the operating budget for fiscal 22 is $6,506,335, with $6,417,539 coming from the tax levy and $88,796 coming from available funds. The available funds include the perpetual care income account, the park trust funds, and the sale of cemetery lots account. As Jim had said, the snow and ice budget is level funded at 850,000. The SOAR enterprise account has increased $20,480 to $8,982,133. And the water enterprise has increased $210,165 to a total of $6,277,749.
Very good, thank you. So again, Joe's got a memo. The whole budget is in there, broken down in tabs. And Joe, I don't know if you want to just hit the highlights of the memo maybe, and we can open it up for questions in the ops side.
Sure, absolutely. So for anybody that might not know me, I'm Joe Conway, the Director of Public Works. Joining me tonight is Ann Waite, our business manager. So Jim and Kevin basically hit a lot of the talking points that I was going to bring up. So I'll kind of just run through them at a high level and get into some of the questions. Starting on the tax side of the budget, the personal services, Jim had mentioned the increase, and that is including the partial refunding of one of the FTEs that we ended up having to cut based on the adjustment after the financial picture change with the pandemic. When we get into personal purchase of services, on the tax side of the budget, the increase of $25,000 for stormwater is basically just allowing us to keep up with the unfunded mandate that the feds have on us for a stormwater permit. And one of the things we have to do now is we have to do wet weather and dry weather testing of all of our outfalls and do some field work related to what those might show. The tests are expensive and we don't have the infrastructure to do it in-house, so we end up having to send that out. This is also allowing for us to start installing some green infrastructure, which is strongly encouraged as part of that permit to take care of some of the nasty that goes through the storm drain and ends up in places like Lake Quannapout and Crystal Lake. Under the highway division, our traffic line item, this is something historically that we've probably never budgeted enough money into. With projects like what we have going on Albion Street right now and the Envision coming online eventually, this is something that we're going to have to start building up to a more appropriate number. Line painting is about to become even more complex than it is right now. So we're just going to start slowly ramping up to a number that's more appropriate so that we're not robbing Peter to pay Paul on the budget to keep up with that. On the building side, so all of our buildings, electricity and natural gas, we use a lot of averages, 3-year averages and 5-year averages. The one benefit to me taking over from my predecessor is he was excellent at keeping longitudinal data. So it's very easy to spot trends and kind of see where our historical use is. This year's increase is basically due to a lot of what I would imagine you probably hear from schools and Doug. COVID-19 to us meant running HVAC longer, air purifiers. The Civic Center changed its occupancy to something that was rented during the morning and occasionally at night to basically running full tilt, full time to serve as swing space for the schools. That skewed the averages a little bit. We're optimistic that there are good things in the future coming for energy reduction and some potential be paid into that. And hopefully we can drive that in the opposite direction as time comes. And then lastly, for a highlight in purchase of services in the tax levy is crane rental for forestry and parks. This is something that we had set a goal a few years ago to get that line item up to $30,000 for the year. We're pretty fortunate that our street tree program between Public Works and the Light Department, we're in excellent condition there. What we're finding is that a lot of the things that we call it to service are now sort of outliers and further off the right of way, requiring expensive crane rental and more specialized equipment that the town just does not own. Snow and ice. So snow and ice, the ask is level funded from last year. Public Works has seen the benefit of 2 mild winters. Hopefully this one ends and it proves to be a third. We've also reaped the benefit of fuel prices being relatively low. There is more of a cautionary tale in what the ask is from myself. even though that's not what we're moving towards for the budget. But the average winter, we do estimate that, that budget should be around just under $1.5 million. That's something, though, as time goes on, if we see the trend continue, we have winters like the last couple of years, then we're going to have to reevaluate that, and our averages should come back to earth and make that a little bit more digestible of a number there. As noted, material and supplies, we tried to be as modest as we could and level fund wherever we could. So there's no real highlights with that. On the enterprises, as Jim and Kevin had mentioned, I'll start with the sewer side. We're fortunate or unfortunate, I guess depends on who you are. Our assessment went down $58,668. This is largely because with the onset of the pandemic, the MWRA deferred a lot of capital that the cities and towns were essentially fit the bill for. So we're seeing a savings there, excuse me. Our budget increase overall, including the MWRA portion, is 0.2285%. And our budget increase, excluding the MWRA, is 0.8832%. The MWRA still represents 75% of the sewer budget. Much like the tax side, there's some personal service adjustments, overtime adjustments related to things like that. You'll note there's an increase in the admin expense. The collector's office in town hall does all of our collection for water and sewer billing. So we contribute a little bit to the salaries there. In the purchase of service sides on sewer, the biggest increase that you'll see is a $27,000 increase for the Farm Street Pumping Station Cleaning Program. I had mentioned to Jim in the subcommittee that, in my opinion, and I'm sorry if you have to hear this again, but the most important piece of infrastructure in the town is our sewer pumping station in the corner of Farm Street and Water Street. The overwhelming majority of everything that goes down the drain ends up in that building and gets pushed towards the MWRA. So what this $27,000 allows us to do is we put that building basically out of commission for half a day, and we clean it every quarter. So things like grease, you name it, any solid or particulate that goes down the drain ends up collecting in that building. So by us being able to clean it there, we're accomplishing two things. We're extending the life of our pumps, and we're catching problems when they're collecting in our wet wells, and we're not sending them down the line to cause another problem that, God forbid, might end up in somebody's home. Outside of that, electricity and natural gas is up a little bit. Those are all based on averages too. One of the things you see is our pumping stations related to sewer run 24/7, 365. Everybody's home, everybody's washing hands, doing more at home, sending more to the drain. So just a natural uptick based on that. In our emergency fund for sewer, we raised $3,000. The reason really being for this is we found that the appropriation we had last year and the year before wasn't even enough to cover one of our pumps, God forbid, if it went down. So we brought this up just so that we could at least get the infrastructure we need in an emergency. We also see an increase in something called the sewer user charge. So what this is, it's a $13,000 increase, and it is based on, there are certain pockets of town where a dwelling or a home may reside within this town limits of Wakefield, but based on some of the logistics in the street, they actually connected to other towns' utilities. So there's a neighborhood up by Reading, behind the Rotary, where the Wakefield home actually discharges into Reading sewer. So we owe them the sewage that goes into that. And you'll see an increase on the water side, exactly the same. There's a slight increase in material and supplies in sewer, and then we have some debt falling off in the sewer line of $63,518. On the water end of the budget, we are actually seeing our MWRA water assessment decrease $35,576. So this is largely because last year we changed the hours that our treatment plant operators are in and pumping. They start earlier than everybody else to pick up, the morning rush and peak consumption, and it proved to be fruitful to us, especially in this year. One of the things we were concerned about is our assessment comes on a flow share, and the city of Boston was basically shut down. So that sent a message to a lot of communities that their flow share would likely increase. So just to put into perspective how beneficial it was for us to change that and really focus on the timing there, Right now, the preliminary water assessment for Stoneham is increasing 18.5%. Excuse me, Reading is 18.5%. Stoneham's preliminary water assessment increase is 24.6, and Melrose is 13.6. Right now, the preliminary estimate from MWRA Wakefield is actually dropping 1.3. So kudos to the staff there for recognizing that and being able to take advantage of that situation, for the benefit. A budget increase in the water end with the MWRA is 3.4637. Without the MWRA, it comes in a little over 4%. On the water side, the MWRA represents 45.36% of the budget. Much like the other ones that we spoke about, the personal service increases, overtime related to that and whatnot. The largest increase on the water side, a couple of years ago, my predecessor went out for some bonding to do some infrastructure work in the street. So maturing debt is going up $120,000. That's because some of the bands are coming online and we started on the payments to it. I can tell you that every year from this year moving on forward, that number is continually dropping. Next year, that number is going to be about $118,000 lower. So we've reached the peak on that, and as time moves on, you should see that number start to decrease. Water purchases services overall is up $41,752. Again, much like the sewer side, there are some homes that are represented in the water user charge to some of these other communities. So we're basing that increase on some of the increased costs from the assessment data that we're getting from our neighbors. Professional services for contracted work, we brought up $15,000. This is basically our line item. If we need to do any work in the street or any technical work related to valving and things like that, where we might not be completely equipped to handle it safely and efficiently. The running costs for water work in the road for pipe replacement is between $150 and $200 a foot. As you can imagine, a call out or two doesn't go particularly far. So increasing this line item just makes us a little bit more appropriate for some of the trends that we've been seeing. And lastly, we added a new line item, which is professional service for water production. One of the things that we had done historically is we had lumped in a lot of the expenses from the treatment plant into the other line item where we were calling out contractors. We have some other testing requirements that we're going to have to start doing as part of our treatment plant. So we thought it was appropriate to budget an amount of money for that, to take care of that, to account for it separately so that we could show what we're spending in treatment. Outside of that, it's kind of my high level overview. I don't want to be completely redundant. So if the group wants, we can go to questions or however we want to take that.
Okay, yeah, we'll stop here and questions from anybody on any of the operating side or the enterprise as well. Gerard, I think you were first.
Joe, this is going to strain going out of order only because it sort of goes to what Doug Butler and Doug Lyons were talking about. But you're somewhat of an expert on it. So on the filtration point, I think Doug raised an interesting point. I know he doesn't want to go down that rabbit hole necessarily, but in my world, in the regulatory space, like as an occupational health or safety standard goes up because of a pandemic or whatever reason, they generally don't come down. That's my experience in the corporate world, at least in the manufacturing world. So I'm just curious if you have a perspective on the town's exposure to a new level change on sort of investments like that, or with particularity to Doug's point about the schools. Like, is there any chance that filter standard is coming down at all? I'm guessing no. I think we should probably plan on no. But since we have the expert here and have a town-wide perspective, maybe that's worth this committee knowing.
I would probably say so. I think when the COVID-19 pandemic, really became prominent last spring, everybody went HVAC equals safety, right? So Superintendent Lyons probably told you about the Bala report that they did. One of the things that happened with that is when they got that report, our group went out and touched every HVAC appliance, motor, belt, you name it, in every building in town. They hit every single one of them. All the filtration was done, everything. Some of the things that you're hearing, people are talking about ionization filters, people are talking about all kinds of other different things to implement and what is the latest and greatest in safety. I think that a regular filter program where you're changing it, pre-pollen, post-pollen, is the most appropriate right now until the data dictates something different to us. I can tell you this year, based on the way that some of the funding from CARES and FEMA came eligible, we are in fantastic shape. We were able to get a lot accomplished. It feels like, you know, for the better half of the summer into the winter, it was all hands on deck related to HVAC, and we kind of became a professional HVAC boutique. So I'm a little hesitant to say that, you know, I think that it'll increase. I'm sure there's a heightened awareness to it now. In my opinion, I would wait to see if, you know, the data drives that, we can make sound decisions based off of that. And then we would have that conversation if we have to. So I know that kind of leaves you hanging a little bit. We're just trying to be, you know, thoughtful and methodical and use something that's tangible and defensible before we come in and say, you know, we need to have a major line item increase related to HVAC work.
Yeah, and as far as anything that's kind of to be determined based on more longitudinal data, I think that's the only way you can think about it precisely. Yeah. All right, thank you, Jim.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Dan?
Yeah. Hey, Joe. So I've got a few questions, and I'm going to start on the Dpw personal services. And for those that want to follow along, I'm going to start on row 301 of the spreadsheet. I noticed that the transfer costs to water sewer was $263,000. It dropped down to $250,000, which sort of surprised me. So can you explain a little bit about why that decreased?
Deferring the positions.
I'm sorry?
So we had a deferment of a position, an FTE in that line. We didn't fill it.
Ah, okay.
So we didn't have to, you know, something, if we filled it, we naturally would have had to use the enterprises to offset as the budget dictated. It didn't exist.
Okay. And then on line 317, there's an entry for $48,982 without an explanation.
Yep. So what that is, and one of the things that changed at the very beginning of July, our stormwater manager had left us. And as last year's budget and the budget before that, she was based completely out of the tax levy. So in the formula above, to calculate the correct transfer into the enterprise, we actually had to remove her and add her back in. So that $48,000 actually represents the cut. It was the cleanest and easiest way I could put that in there without having to change all the formulas. And, you know, I think 11 lines might have been affected by doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So that shows, you know, part of her salary that normally would have been added back to the tax levy to show the correct proportions represented there.
Okay.
As we move forward into next year, I will tell you, we were able to hire someone to replace her. We hired someone with a PE, so we have an embarrassment of riches there. We have someone that can handle stormwater and some other design projects for us. And that person will be treated in kind with the rest of the staff in engineering. So the
Right.
stormwater manager role will turn into a staff level engineer role moving forward.
All right, I'm gonna take a liberty and just call that a plug number. Okay, so let's see, I had, forestry and parks.
Yes.
There was a significant decrease in the compensation for a tree climber. Line 377. Is the person gone part-time or something?
Sorry, I'm just catching up. No, so this is one of those. Last year, if you remember, we budgeted pretty heavy based on the Collins report that came in, and some of the thresholds that our staff had the opportunity to get themselves to. They were given a window to meet their job descriptions, and if they did not meet their job descriptions, they would fall back. So we had to budget for the worst case scenario. So this year, that budget number is based on what that person is accountable to for their job description and the consumer salary.
Okay, all right.
So I'll just say a lot of that Collin City was very incentive laden and heavy related to that. All of our staff had the ability to go out and either hit their job descriptions in full and seek the benefit of it or not. A few of them were fantastic. The overwhelming majority were fantastic. Some clearly were not.
Okay, and then switching over to, I guess both water and sewer have the same question. The emergency fund, is it more like, for example, the finance committee has a reserve fund, which really isn't a fund. We just have a line item where we can cover emergencies. And there's at the end of the year, if it's not spent, it goes back to the general account. Are these two emergency funds sort of the same way, where there really isn't a fund at the end of the year? And if it's not spent, it goes back to the general account?
Exactly. So that line item really for us is break glass in case of emergency. You know, we lose a pump, we lose a big ticket item, a gate valve in the street, or something like that. We need some cash to mitigate the problem immediately. That's
Right,
there.
right.
It's
right.
one of those lines, we hope we never touch it and it goes right back and we're okay.
Yeah, so it works just like our reserve fund. Okay,
Exactly.
beautiful. Thank you. I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Thank you, Dan. Doug Butler, I believe.
So sort of staying on Dan's spreadsheet, in forestry and parks, the big number there around, not professional services, but purchase of services, is that professional services other?
Yes.
And I mean, this is more, and I guess this is a question for Jim as well. You know, it doesn't seem like we ever come, I guess we're close to the ballpark of it this year, but we've been significantly over the last couple of years. Should we just budget that number higher? Should that not be an 88,000 number, and should it be more a 110?
I think it could be. I think some of the things that have been probably charged into that line that shouldn't have been in the past are some of the expenses related to the tree crane rental that I was talking about earlier.
Okay.
I'll take that comment under advisement though and see how, once we get back to a semi-normal or more expected year, you know, but for now, I think both myself and Dennis Fazio, the Forestry and Parks Supervisor, are pretty comfortable where we are, and we think that we have manageable numbers to get us.
Okay. I just wasn't sure if it was one of these budgets that for the past 10 years, we've been $20,000 over every year, and we just keep it the same because Steve likes to keep that number.
Is that
You're
the,
trying to add to that number.
I'm adding to it, but you like keeping it the same, you know, this is,
excuse me, was that the line item for the tree removal and so forth, Joe or Ann, from the quote unquote hurricane we had? Is that why that's where it is?
So that is one of the ones, but what I was saying basically is that same line item, there were probably things because we had under budgeted that for the past couple of years that we were charging out of professional services other. Professional services other is things like, you know, paying to fertilize and aerate our parks and open space, you know, some things like that. Anything that Dennis doesn't have the infrastructure to do on his own, we would have to hire out.
yeah, and that's a big chunk of that subsection. So I was like, well, we should, if we're gonna do it, then let's do it right. In terms of the water and sewer budget, and you can refresh me. So we went to this 3-tiered structure last August or last July 1st. How much have residents' water bills changed, and is that a reason? Is there any impact on that? The you know, the price increase on, generally speaking, people's water bills of a relatively sizable amount, does that correlate to why why the budget is going up much less for water and sewer going forward? And or like, do you know how much people's average bill has changed?
So as far as the average bill change, I don't have that data with me right now. I could certainly get, you know, your number related to that.
Yeah.
I could tell you that, so one of the things we did, I was new, and was new. So we thought, if any time to come in and do a rate study and kind of talk about how we're trying to set our rates so that, they're self-sustaining, they're appropriate, we're funding reserves correctly. And then, one of the goals we had too is to be able to build ourselves to a point where we're doing some capital and not requiring bonding to do it. We actually found out in that process that there's actually state law that says if you're an MWRA community, you have to have ascending block rates. So I reached out to Tom Mullen about that just to see if he had any other guidance. He concurred with basically what the law said, and I certainly don't want to be the one to have to explain to the Department of Revenue that I knew that and didn't comply.
I don't think that. I think if you went to the typical, I think the story we frankly got last May, it does not jive with what people's experience has been. And that's sort of not putting it on you and putting it on Steve, but that there was this notion that it was going to be an incredibly heavy user base that was going to be hit by this. And I think almost the number of families that end up hitting that tier 3 is way higher than you guys had, initially said. And maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe I just talked to the wrong people. But that's sort of the global pushback. But I actually wondered, does that have any bearing on, what we take in from the community? Does that have bearing on the water and sewer budget? And I'm just trying to understand the pass-through logic there.
Sure. So one thing I could say is that across the board, probably in every community, everywhere, consumption is up, right? We've been told for the past year, wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. People aren't at work, they're at home, eating, doing, regular daily life at home instead of an office or some other places. So I can comfortably say that, consumption is probably more up than it is not. So that is certainly probably affecting some
Was
people.
our consumption up this year? Is our consumption up sizably this year?
I don't believe it's up sizably, but it is up.
Yeah, I guess my thing is I'll bet you just be interesting to see. And I think, by the way, if not to speak for those town councilor folk, but if I'm running for this is one of my platforms of that I'd run on. I guess the other question around, no, I'm good in terms of other than the water and sewer issue. I think you've moved snow and ice to where, I grant you get it that we're not moving it up to the 1.5 million number. Geez, I think, Steve would jump off a bridge.
You're picking on me a lot tonight, Doug.
I am. Well,
Steve or Kevin, in just a few sentences, I've hopped on the snow and ice, but there's a reason not to bring it higher because you can't bring it down or something.
Yeah, if we were to reduce that budget for whatever reason, my understanding is that then you cannot take advantage of the overdrafting of it.
That's correct.
So that kind of handcuffs it. So keeping it low, not low, 850 isn't bad. Was 293, 500 for 20 years ago. So, and Joe's done a great job the last couple of years, and he's going to return money back on this year too. So that's the only thing I disagree with on Joe's whole budget is that the analysis of that. He still has a blizzard of 78 in there at 2022 prices. So
hope fuel stays low. That's all I can say.
Doug, did you have another comment? Or you good?
Yeah, I guess my other question was about, and I'm not sure if Joe's going to talk about this separately because you sent it around. Talking about both the recycling budget, and I think you went over at town council, some grant you're getting for the composting and whatnot. And I also want to see how you guys are going to make it to the JRM, because I go to Costco twice a week in dump off a load of cardboard and be back in a half hour. They could,
no, yeah, so we are gonna move to some of the other items.
Oh, okay.
Anybody have any other questions on the ops stuff? That's, we just kind of went through end to end between the ops and the enterprise. Seeing no additional hands. So we have capital and refuge to cover as well. And then the articles, are we doing the articles tonight? I'm sorry.
Well, the articles
you have
would
the
be
proposed-
would be the trash article.
Right. So on the capital side, in the packet, you have the list of capital items Joe's been working on with the capital committee, again, for DPW, water and sewer. So I don't know if you have any questions, if anybody has questions on those. The spreadsheet is before you. It's still a little dynamic, Joe, right? You've been meeting, it's not finished yet. Is that fair to say?
Yes, so the group was, I would call at about a 75% status as of last night. We have one more meeting to go, but I'm happy to say that they're right in the wheelhouse that they need to be in, you know, to stay on task and within the budget that, you know, they were requested to hit. And hopefully all goes well. And this year, you know, we can make up for maybe a little bit of lost ground last year.
Yes,
So
Chairman,
he's, yes,
Jim. Yes, we met last night with the Capital Planning Committee. And as indicated, Joe has indicated, there's going to be one more meeting next Tuesday for their final vote. And the number is right around the number that we all expected, around the 2 million figure.
okay, great. So does the committee have any questions? Joe's list is in the packet. You know, the items that are listed as a 5-year LP are a lease purchase, Joe, correct?
Yes.
And then you've got some items listed as tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So he went over that with the subcommittee. You know, as usual, you know, we've got some 20-year-old, 25-year-old items that are being replaced. So any questions anybody want to bring up on the capital list that Joe has provided? Dan?
Yeah, thanks. So I looked at the capital and I'm looking at sheet 1 and I'm just missing it because it adds up to 1,594,000 and I did have 2 million down. So is there another tab or someplace I need to find the other 406,000?
So what I thought I provided was a sheet with about 255,000, which is just DPW requests for capital items.
Aha.
He's not speaking about capital per se. He's speaking about his capital requests to the capital committee.
Okay.
Is that what you're seeing when?
Well, no,
there's a sheet?
I guess what you sent out is something called DPW cap request 1,594,000. So what Joe Bertrand just mentioned is you focus on 2 million. So what I'm not seeing is 400,000. That's not part of DPW's capital request. I got it now.
So
Yeah, I'll have to, go ahead, Joe.
I was going to say, so Dan, one of the things I have to do, I owe the capital planning committee a cleaned up, condensed version of their work to date that I'll share with Joe probably first thing in the morning that he could share with you. And then if anybody wants to review it and has any questions, you want to reach out directly to me or through Joe, don't be shy. We've been through it enough times now, even if it's not mine, I'm pretty sure I can get you the answer that you might be looking for.
Yep. So you're right. I was speaking out of turn. Sorry about that. You're right. The thing you're looking at is like a 1.5, and then there's some enterprise equipment. So that is still a work in progress. Is that what we're saying?
That's right.
Very good. Dan, I'm sorry for the confusion. Did you have any questions relative to that?
The 1.6 million, no, I think I'm all set with that. I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yep. Any other committee members? Doug Butler.
just a quick question. I see the zeroed out, so the Broadway gate design of 2.5 million. Does that
Yeah.
mean you're not getting Broadway back until we spend 2.5 million?
No, what that means is that that project is larger than what the capital budget could sustain. It would be the only request funded, and it would be over by about $500,000 of the target. What we did was we include things like that on it for transparency for the committee, just to let them know, like you would see in my initial submissions to them, I even include painting, just so they know what's on our radar.
Yeah, no, Joe, this, I guess, probably wasn't more towards you. This was probably, and I'm sorry if I missed this in the capital planning subcommittee, like, is that what we're looking at for getting Broadway reopened?
That
No.
would be a signal project to not get Broadway open. We're hoping that the FRA agrees with the package that we've sent them. We've maintained from day one that we think that we are compliant and have demonstrated that to them, I hope. What that would be is that is a project to get us comfortably below their safety threshold, so that, God forbid, if there was ever an accident abutting the tracks or in the general area to which, they assessed it negatively against us, we have some room to breathe. Right now, if you remember that a few years ago, there was an accident on the tracks in that intersection, which basically sent the safety threshold numbers according to their scale, higher than what is desirable according to what they're telling us. So there would be a signaling project to give us some more room so that hopefully we never have to live through something like that ever, at least in my career.
All right, I think that's, any other questions then on the operating budgets? All right, Steve, do you want to do the articles with the DPW team?
Yeah, let Joe finish up his articles so he can go.
Thank you. Agreed.
Okay,
Joe,
so
go ahead on the article side.
so much like the budget for this year, we just tried to be as reasonable as possible. We didn't want to come in with a bunch of articles not really knowing what the complete financial picture is going to look like. So we have our eminent domain article for $1. That I can guarantee you probably has not changed any of the wording in a decade, just allowing us to take easements and have the ability to do some of the work we need to do through takings and whatnot. So that's basically in there. It's almost a boilerplate article at this point in time. And then our refuse, recycling, and yard waste budget is the second one. We presented to the council the budget that we asked for was $2.28411. I gave the council a couple of options related this year. Again, one of the things with COVID-19, kind of like consumption through the faucet, is we found that everybody being home, the tonnage and the trash increased significantly. We're projecting this year to use all of our expected tonnage that we would use through our normal budget, plus all of our contingency money, and come in razor thin. We anticipate not needing any overdrafts or anything like that, but there's certainly a tonnage explosion in the street. So that represents some of that. Was one difference this year you'll find from last year we cut the refuse budget as well. One of the things we cut out of that was all the leaf, gravel processing, disposing of catch basin cleanings, and sweeping debris from that budget last year. This year, we've obviously re-included that because now we're anticipating 2 years of material that we're going to have to try to move and make up some ground. One of the things in the package that was presented to the council was the full appropriation request, and then also a series of examples of what the budget request could look like if they were to install a fee for curbside items like couches and things like that. It's basically that budget in a nutshell. The only other thing, the substantial cut from it was we used to do a 3rd grade education program that we removed, not knowing the comfort level, and when we did that, we get 3 classrooms full of 25 children together and put on an enrichment program. It didn't seem like the most appropriate time to budget for that and try to interject ourselves into their space while they're trying to figure out what safety is.
Very good. So at the town council meeting this week, they chose option A, Joe. Option B was if you implemented a bulk charge. Is that right?
No, they chose B.
I'm sorry, they chose B.
Yeah.
So the budget will be, the ask will be the 2.199.
Correct.
Questions on the trash? Doug, Dennis, I'm sorry.
I just, well, I got nothing on trash. I just want to remind you that we got to take a vote on our subcommittee meeting before you adjourn. Item number 4 of our agenda. We didn't do it yet.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if we'll vote on those tonight or vote on those at the next meeting because they were just presented tonight, but thank you. Any questions on trash? Any other articles, Joe?
Yes, so we included one in the packet, which I believe is going to change, but we included the mention of a supplemental DPW appropriation. And basically what that was is, as you remember, in the end of August, the town of Wakefield and only the town of Wakefield basically got hit with a hurricane. And we took on tree damage that I don't think anybody's seen in years and years and years. So we put an article in knowing that there was a potential of maybe having to supplement what we had to spend to clean that disaster up. We're hopeful that we'll be able to be smart in other places and save some money to make sure that number is as low as possible. But we included that as something that if we get to town meeting and need to address that, we could. I think that I don't want to speak for Mr. Mayo, but I believe that's going to be wrapped up into a different article, which is kind of all encompassing across the town. But that's kind of where the thought process was for us related to Public Works, including that in this submission.
Yeah, what we thought we would do, what we did last year, when we were, I guess we did it in June at our June town meeting instead of our May one, not knowing what was going to happen with revenues, not knowing what was going to happen with COVID, whether we needed to add to any budget to cover things. I think we appropriated $250,000 last year, if I'm not mistaken. Kevin, am I correct?
It's approximately that amount, yes.
Yeah. We would probably have an article, or we will have an article like that again for a couple of reasons. Number one, we may have an overdraft in DPW because of the tree issue, which really jumps out on from that hurricane. And when we contacted MEMA and FEMA, they kind of laughed at us and said, "What if it wasn't a $5 million problem? Don't call us." So that was too bad, but. Joe's crew did a great job, and Wakefield was open well before Melrose was. A lot of people in Melrose complained about that, but they did a great job in cleaning that up, particularly in the Greenwood section. The other reason why we want to keep that article in there is that we are expecting and have requested funding from both the CARES Act, which we will get, but also from FEMA under the COVID protocol. I am not convinced 100% that FEMA will deliver on what they have okayed basically as expenditures by the end of this fiscal year. So there may be some balancing issue there. So that's kind of a placeholder for us, kind of a belt and suspenders item. Of course, if FEMA comes in and then we don't use it, we don't appropriate it, and it doesn't matter. It just would stay in the general fund. So that's the reason why we would have that kind of general article like we did last year. Did I miss anything, Kevin?
No, that's good.
All right, great. I know Joe, I think, sent a memo, and I don't think I put it on the shared drive for the rest of the group, but those were the 3 items. It was just 3 bullets on a memo, correct?
Yeah, that one was short and sweet. Yep.
Doug Butler, you had a hand up?
No, well, I mean, I guess I'm a little confused around, so there's this option, the option A and option B. So they chose to go with the option B. And the way you came up with that, like, it looks like it's all calculated at the back end. I guess I'm struggling with the argument that was made around this, that a bunch of our other communities do this when Melrose doesn't, Reading doesn't, Peabody doesn't, Saugus charges $2. Like, going to 20, you're pricing us with Needham, Boxford, I don't know, Manchester. I'd love it if we were those towns, but we're not. And so it feels to me like in a sort of an egregious pricing gouge on top of last year's water gouge. Like, it just feels to me like these are like the I'm not sure what the agenda is being set here, but this does feel like, you know, prime for $80,000, it feels like this is, you know, this is sort of like increasing the pit fee to $50. And like, you know, you'll get the people coming at you with pitchforks for this. This just doesn't seem like, it seems like a bad idea. And I mean, I heard the counselors chatting about it and thinking about like people come to this town to dump stuff off. No, I'm worried about you start making people pay $20 and you had 8,000 drops, and you think that the number's going to drop in half or something along those lines. I'll tell you, those 8,000 items are still getting probably put out. They're just not probably going to get put out in front of people's houses. So I think you're setting yourself up with this, the fee level you set, you're setting yourself up for a dumping problem next year.
Well, I gotta say, can I jump in, Mr. Chairman? A little history here. That was the same argument that I heard when the town instituted a white good fee of $20 for people.
But everybody charges that, Steve. Everybody charges that now.
Well, I'm telling you,
Not anywhere near.
If you buy a couch from Jordan's Furniture, you either get free delivery or they're going to charge you $25 to take the old one away. So council voted 5-2. That's.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm just saying that like the council voted. The council didn't even read the stuff. So that's half the problem.
No.
Like, don't start talking to me about how well the council did there.
I think they did.
I would have to agree. I think some of them were pretty thorough on their analysis.
They spoke about it, but they
that as
clearly
a-
didn't read anything. They just spoke about that. Oh, please, they're full of anecdotal stories. I mean, of like, you know,
Well,
people coming and
I'd
dumping.
view your statement as an opinion. Maybe it's fact. We'll see if it plays out. But
Yes.
so this town council voted it. That is what is going to be before us for voting purposes later. Correct?
Correct.
Indeed.
Doug, you good?
I'm fine.
Dan, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm trying to get my hands around this supplemental DPW article. I'm looking at my forecast and my spreadsheet for fiscal year 21, and I don't see it there. I don't know where this that article came
Probably
from.
not on it. It would be a free cash one. So, yeah.
Oh, it's free cash.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. So is this third article? I didn't see any material on it. Is this going to be like another $250,000 from free cash, or is this going to be tax levy?
This would all be free cash because we would need it this fiscal year.
And is it 250,000? Oh, it's this fiscal year,
Yeah.
21. So what about 22?
No, this would only be to cover things in 21.
And is it for is it again $250,000 for
You
21?
know what, I don't know. We're hoping that actually the DPW budget may be able to absorb some of that big overrun on that tree equipment removal if things pan out, maybe not. We don't know yet what may not have come in under CARES and or FEMA. So I don't have a number for you tonight, Dan.
Okay, so you think it'd be too much? Well, at 250,000, if that's what it is, it's going to be too much for a reserve fund. Because we're only at 300,000.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
Dan,
Um,
if I could touch on that just super quick. So one of the things, as we'd mentioned before, not to beat a dead horse, but so HVAC is a line item typically that, we usually get beat up on year after year, but because of the way that there's funding related to the pandemic was structured, we're actually in excellent shape there. So we're anticipating a turn back of a decent size there. Challenged my group to see if they can still function at the high level, that everyone's accustomed to, and net that out. So we're optimistic that will be, very, very small, pending, some sort of other unanticipated large expense coming down the road.
Okay, so if it is small, then it may, combined with other stuff, come in under our 300,000 for fiscal year 21. And we won't need to use that special article. So I get it. It's a work in progress. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, very good. I did find the memo. I'll drop it on that shared drive that you have, but literally it's just the memo with the 3 bullets. So you didn't miss anything, but I will drop it on the shared drive. Was there any other questions for the DPW team? Okay, Joe, appreciate it. One point, I guess, Joe, the folks in the subcommittee got the book, quote unquote. What I sent everybody was everything but the supplemental. So I'll put an email out to this team if they want a book, and I'll get you a number, and I get the books dispersed. So the books are supporting documentation, 5-year averages on anything, on everything really. A lot of information in the book that is not on the shared drive that you grab the info from tonight. So I'll send an email on that, and if you want it, you'll get it. All right, Joe, Ann, thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Great job, Joe and Ann.
See ya.
Yes, appreciate it. Okay, Steve, we will move to reserve fund.
Perfect. So the reserve fund, as you know, was approved by the town council early on in the budget process for 300,000. We did discuss that at the finance committee about, based on percentage of our budgets, should that be increased, and by our policy and probably just good sense it should be. So I brought that back to the council on Monday night, and they did approve. They reconsidered the budget and have approved the reserve fund now at $400,000. So just give you an update on that. So when the finance committee votes I got the sense the finance committee wanted to increase that. Like to have the town council and the finance committee on the same page, despite what finance committee member Doug Butler thinks. But in this case, I would hope that we would, in this case, finance committee was correct.
Well,
All right, that's one for this group. So we don't need to do anything on this tonight.
No, when you vote, you'll be
Yeah.
voting the same recommendation. I didn't hear what Doug said. Probably a good thing.
It was bigger than one. Let's just leave it at that. All right, so it's been changed from 300 to 400.
Yes.
You have the spreadsheet. Dan, did you have a question, comment?
well, I was just going to say that, and kudos to Steve, because that's something I pushed for, because I thought it was too low because of our policy. The policy with that finance committee and at the time selectmen approved was that it ought to be at least 0.5% of tax levy or costs minus a couple of different items. And at 400,000, we were at that policy. And I'd point out that when we get an audit or someone outside auditors come in and look at our stuff, and they look at a policy and we're not following the policy, they don't like that.
Right.
So getting us from 300,000 to 400,000 gets us back within policy. So that's the strongest reason for making this happen.
The rating agencies will love it.
Yeah.
Because yeah.
Yeah, and the town council was exactly what you said, Dan. You know, when Steve explained the reasons why he felt it was prudent to do they completely agreed, both based on, bonding and stuff like that. So I think good move all around. Appreciate it. Kevin, did you have a comment?
Yeah, while we're talking reserve fund, I just wanted to give the finance committee a heads up on where we are this fiscal year on a couple different items that we will be looking for reserve fund transfers at the end of the year. And the reason we don't bring them to you sooner than the end of the year is we try to get the departments to cover whatever they can within their budget to make the reserve fund request as small as possible. Right now, we're looking at, I don't have exact dollar amounts yet, but under the legal budget, we'll be looking for a reserve fund transfer due to the legal settlement at Butler Ave. The workers' comp and the general insurance, we had John Spinello in a couple meetings ago. We're going to be, and we talked about needing reserve fund transfers there at the end of the year. Also, with regards to the vocational school, we had more students end up at both Essex North and Minuteman. So we will be looking for additional funds there. Joe's budget for the tree removal. And we're doing a separate article for police and fire indemnification that we've had personnel that have been out injured and sick, that it's been very expensive, that we're probably going to be looking for upwards to probably 75,000 just for that one item. So the reason we put in the supplemental article was if we went over the 300,000, we wanted to make sure we had a vehicle to cover the additional costs. So that's just an FYI for the committee.
I appreciate it. Okay, I think that's it for reserve fund. Anybody comments? Any additional comments? All right, next up, retirement. All right, Kevin.
Yep, last budget is the retirement budget, requesting an increase of $298,907 over the current fiscal year. This increase breaks down under the contributory tax levy portion of the budget. There's an increase of $207,202. Under the non-contrib tax levy portion, there's a decrease of $4,182. And for the water, sewer, and light department enterprise transfer, there's a total increase of $95,887. This budget is based on an updated funding schedule voted by the Wakefield Retirement Board. This schedule runs through 2036 and is based on a January 2020 valuation. The current funding ratio of the town's fund is 64.7%. The total budget request for fiscal 2022 is $6,977,405, with $5,599,427 coming from tax levy and $1,377,978 coming from the enterprise transfers.
Okay, in that spreadsheet, there's a number of sheets in there with a lot of supporting information. Any questions or comments? Okay. That concludes the budgets. You do have a summary spreadsheet that the team, Kevin and Steve, update. And to date, 3.32 is the overall increases of all budgets that have gone before town council. Is that right, Steve? That's what I have in front of me.
Yes.
Grand total to date is 3.32. So
Actually, that might be a little bit
should have
higher
that spread.
now.
Oh,
I'm sorry, Jim. That might be a little bit higher now since we increased the reserve fund by 100,000.
Yeah, the reserve
No, that's
fund
in
on
there.
the sheet
That's
that
in
I
there.
Yep. Steve got that updated already.
Okay,
Yeah,
he's got it.
That increase is in there, yeah.
Okay.
So again, summary, it's useful information. 3.68 was for DPW, and the total to date is 3.32.
Yep.
Okay. I don't think I have any committee comments. Anybody have any committee comments they need to bring up? Okay, Steve, anything to add?
I just had one thing. The health insurance budget is ready. Who is on that subcommittee? I don't have my list with me. Health insurance?
Don and Dan.
Yeah,
Okay, Dawn and Dan?
yep.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I will get that out to you, and we can set up a time next week. It's not too bad.
Yeah.
All right, so we meet again in 2 weeks. There is, as I said earlier, a public forum. If you're interested in the school budget, check the website out. Jump on that Zoom call. And that is, there was something else I was just going to say on that, but oh, and Gerard sent out the WCAT. I did watch that. That was very helpful, Gerard, to get to the 1 hour and 20 minutes. I did watch a little bit of the beginning of it, so that was good information. So appreciate getting that over to the group. Thank you. The only action item I had is I will send an email to see if you want the DPW book that has the supporting information, and I'll get that through Joe.
Mr. Chairman.
Dan, are you good?
Yeah, I have a.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was just going to give the group another update. Off of my spreadsheet, I've updated all the budgets that we've got so far, an estimate for the schools, and I got the capital in there. So we're getting down to near the end. And based on my analysis right now, we're looking at a deficit spend of about $1.2 million. So otherwise we'll have to draw from cash about 1.2, which is not too bad. I was going to ask Evan if he has any sense as to what our fiscal year end 21 local receipts look like. Right now, I've got $7 million for 21. And I'm curious if he's got anything to add to what we're going to be ending up with for this year for local receipts.
Still working on that, Dan. I did see some motor vehicle excise numbers. They were down over last year. So I'm still working on, and that's the biggest local receipt. It's about $4 million. So I'm hoping to come in, in the $3.8 million range. So it's not going to hit probably what we had budgeted.
And I would assume that hotels and meals taxes are both way down.
Correct. As in parking violations and the collections from the registry of motor vehicles, those are down considerably also.
Yeah. Okay. So our figure for $7 million which is a significant decrease over 20. The 7 million is probably still a fair estimate at this point in time.
I'm hoping to get there.
Confidence.
Sounds like it's still a reach estimate.
It's a reach. Okay, very good. Thank you.
On local receipts, one of the items that Audit and Finance and the state level talked about in regard to the latest relief package, and it hasn't been all unpacked yet, is that revenue replacement may be part of it for municipalities. And that's something that we hoped to have before last time, and it wasn't. But if that's in there, that could help maybe plug some of those gaps. So, well, I'll give the council, the finance committee more on that when I get the info unpacked on that. So that may be helpful.
Right. Okay, any other committee comments? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn for the evening.
Oh, wait, do we have to do the thing Dennis talked about?
I guess he wants to do it at next.
Typically, the subcommittee meeting minutes are approved after
Okay, that's
they're
fine.
read,
I
but
just did-
I don't know.
Jog
Steve,
my
what do you-
memory as we were
I don't
saying.
think it was not on your agenda.
Steve, what do you?
I don't think
Right.
the agenda had the DPW subcommittee meetings on it.
It
So,
did
yeah,
not.
Did not.
It did not.
All right, then, never mind. Withdrawn. Adjourn away.
Next meeting. Thank you.
I thought it was under item 4.
Item 4 is comments. It's not approval of minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll move
All right,
adjournment.
so is there a motion to adjourn? Excuse me. Was there a motion to
I'll
adjourn?
move that, Jim.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, appreciate everybody coming on and
Deal.
see you again in a few weeks.